In a move that could cripple the 3D printing industry as a whole, Stratasys has just sued Bambu Lab. Let's talk about it. Hey all, welcome back to the channel, and if you didn't see the news yet, on August 8th, 2024, Stratasys sued Bambu Lab, citing patent infringement for 10 total patents across 2 separate lawsuits. And Stratasys said, we're going to take our lawyers in the hardest area of the United States with the patent attorney judge, and we will see you in court. If things go the way that Stratasys wants, it will throw the entire 3D printing industry into the dark ages. Before you get all uppity and start commenting about all the reasons that you hate one company and like the other, or one way or another, we actually put in a bunch of work to talk to patent attorneys, and I reached out to all of the attorneys on the side of Stratasys. So I'm going to do my best to disseminate this information for you all so that you can understand exactly what's going on here, whether you should care, and what my thoughts are toward the end. So stay tuned for that. And if you do want to follow along at home, we will have the court listener links in that description, which will give you everything that we're going to be showing today involving the case and will allow you to follow it as closely as possible. And while yes, some of this stuff is paid, eventually it does become free, and at least you can Google what each of these things means so you can understand where this process is. For a lot of you that don't know, these type of court cases can take months or even years to go through. But I want to talk about the actual claims being made here. Stratasys has 2 different lawsuits against Bambu, specifically for patent infringement. We can see that they're listing 5 in each, some with granting dates as far back as 2009 in one and 2013 in another, with some being quite a bit newer than that, with one even being granted on the 1st of January 2024. So starting off with this first patent, this one is kind of a basic one. As you can see in the abstract, it is a method for printing a 3-dimensional part with an additive manufacturing system. The method including printing layers of the 3-dimensional part and you might say, Grant, that is a ton of words to just talk about multi-tool head and purge block 3D printing. And you're right. Welcome to the crappy world of patents. Now, if you want to hear me and an actual patent attorney talk very frankly about the patent system and how it is completely screwed up and is not designed for the little guy to win, we'll card to the episode where we talked with Seth Polanski, who I hope to bring back on so that we can talk about this from a real legal perspective, because all the law firms that I talked to, while they did give their opinions to me, did not want to be on camera or have any actual quotes provided, so a lot of what you're going to hear is anecdotal. This patent was granted in 2016, which is right around the time that Prusa released the first MMU. I will point out that that was 8 years ago, and Stratasys has remained completely silent about this patent to anybody producing a multi-color, multi-material, whatever it is, with a single tool head right up until now. That one sink in for a little bit. Now, as far as the experts say about this, technically, Stratasys can decide when they want to enforce it. However, there is a strong argument that because they haven't been enforcing it for so long, that patent itself is null and voided. That's where we get into something called the PTAB, the Patent Trials and Admissions Board, where Seth and myself both agree that patents go to die. But you'll see that I have a different opinion here, that I don't actually think this is about patents at all. Stay tuned. Patent number 2 is a flexible, removable heat bed patent. This was granted in 2017, and we can see that this patent was not initially by Stratasys, but by a company called Arrivo, a company that Stratasys bought back in March of 2024. So this patent has been used by a company called Arrivo for years. And the industry has pretty much said, we're just gonna do our thing, and Arrivo didn't care. And then their technology portfolio is bought up by Stratasys. I wonder where anything from Arrivo went. Oh yeah, they probably bought the patents. Allegedly. So this patent has only been a part of the Stratasys portfolio for less than 12 months. And prior to that, Stratasys themselves, I believe, were in violation of this actual patent. This is your flexible magnetic build plate with PEI on it, something that pretty much every 3D printer that is manufactured these days comes with, unless you're living in the dark ages, because honestly, glass is just so last year. The next one we see is the generic FDM patent that Stratasys filed in 2006 that has crippled this industry for many years, and it's kind of forced this industry into an open source application. And while, yes, you can technically go after people for open source things, it is so much harder because you can't control it, right? Open source means there's no patents. We're not trying to make money off it. If you want to copy it, go ahead. The commercial side of it is we're producing kits utilizing open source. Is there any legal ramifications there? That's not for me to decide. That's for a judge to decide. But Bambu specifically is one of the more notable 3D printing companies to hit the market that is fully closed source, but yet also positioned toward consumers, right? Closed source 3D printing is completely obvious and has been around for decades in the form of Stratasys. Actually, for much longer than a couple of decades. Stratasys is kind of the king of closed source 3D printing, with 3D Systems and others following along. But this patent, it's infill. This is the infill patent. And again, infill has been in open source for years, right? Before Cura, we had, oh my gosh, let's see, before Cura, we had Repetier Host, we had Slick 3R, right? That have been around well before this patent was filed. And then there's some other kind of weird ones that exist. And again, this has been a patent that Stratasys has had. They filed in 2006. They were granted in 2009. And what? It's been sitting on a shelf for 15 years and they haven't done a darn thing with it. I was building 3D printers before this patent was actually granted. I built my first 3D printer in 2008. But realize that if Stratasys is actually successful at enforcing this patent, it means that infill, as we know it, goes away. The final patent in the first lawsuit is the 3-dimensional printer with force detection, otherwise known as the load cell patent, where MakerBot, a company that Stratasys bought quite a few years back for over $600 million, patented the idea to utilize load cells or deflection detection technology to determine what is going on a build plate. It can also be used to determine what is going on in a 3D print. So this is going to be one of those bed leveling ones utilizing load cells, something that companies have been doing for years. But Bambu is probably one of the more famous ones doing it. Again, we've seen this on open source printers for, gosh, I can think of at least 5 to 10 years. Certainly before MakerBot did it, but this is just the first patent. I'd love to know your thoughts on these down below, because I get a little frustrated when I see these patents, because sure, these patents have existed and they've been created and they've been used as assets by companies like MakerBot, Stratasys, and others, but they haven't been enforced. And traditionally, you must enforce that patent constantly for it to be utilized. But this is where we have this problem in the US patent and trademark system, where if you don't have money, you can't defend your patent. And Stratasys, being one of the big publicly traded companies out there, has a lot of liquid capital. Let's not lie to ourselves. Bambu poses a serious risk to Stratasys, especially on their more, let's go with, consumer-focused 3D printers like the MakerBot line. Moving on to the second lawsuit here, we have 5 different patents. We can see that this first one here is for tagged build material for 3-dimensional printing. So that's the chipped filament. For those who don't know, Bambu puts RFID or NFC tags into their filament. And actually, Mitch from Polar 3D was one of the first people that I was aware of to actually crack the code. Make no mistake, if companies like Bambu and Creality, those are both companies that have RFID on their spools of their multi-material units, wanted to lock down their machines to only their material, they absolutely could. And you as a consumer, outside of keeping your machine from updating, have no way to stop them. Welcome to the world of DRM. You don't always control the things that you own. But this system, I know, has existed well before the patent was filed by MakerBot because of a company called XYZ Printing and the Da Vinci line of 3D printers. This is a machine that came out in 2014, which, as you will note, is 4 years before the patent was even filed by MakerBot, a company that chipped their filament. And while, yes, you can completely rewrite the EEPROMs on their chips within Arduino, and in fact, it was cracked like within, what, 6 or 8 months of those filament cartridges being out there, they're certainly not using anywhere near the encryption that Bambu is using. It proves that prior art already existed. And part of the thing with a patent is if you don't have prior art, you can get a patent. But if you have prior art, a patent should not be given. So in my non-professional opinion, and in the opinion of the patent attorneys that I talked to, if Bambu can find real-world examples of where this was used before MakerBot actually patented it, this patent could get completely null and voided incredibly quickly. And if you're wanting to learn more about the process of invalidating, a buddy of mine, Josh Malone, most famous for being the inventor of the bunches of balloons thing, you know, where you plug it into your hose and it makes a bunch of water balloons? Yeah, that guy. He has an entire documentary called Invalidated to talk about his fight against one of the largest companies in the world when it comes to as seen on TV, Telebrands. I think you'll find it interesting. We'll card to it if you want to go take a look. I'd love to have Josh on the podcast to talk about that fight, maybe even the attorneys that fought with him. Let me know if you guys want to hear something like that. I think that'd be a fun interview style episode. I don't know, Josh is a busy guy because he's currently fighting for the little guys, to be able to have protection on their patents and not let big guys steamroll them into submission. Patent number 2 on lawsuit 2 is kind of the same thing, except it was filed in 2020. Definitely, we had prior art before this. So it's the same thing. It's an RFID or NFC patent around materials for 3D printing. We then have the networked 3-dimensional printer with 3-dimensional scanner. Now, specifically, Bambu does not have a 3-dimensional scanner. They've got that camera that is using the AI style software to detect print failures, but it's not actually scanning. The scanning is occurring during the actual setup of the print, the LiDAR, if you will, or LiDAR with an L-I-E. And so it's a very basic thing to say. I would consider what Bambu has more of a single line optical sensor, or technically a single line 3D scanner it could be as well. But really the one here that you should be knowledgeable of is the networked atmosphere. That's the cloud. The cloud is something that Bambu is one of the first to really implement in a meaningful way. Sure, other companies had their own style of the cloud, but it was nowhere near as well integrated as Bambu's was and still is. This was filed back in 2012 and approved in 2014, well before, as far as I can tell, any other company had a networked 3D printer in this way. So this one's gonna be a little bit tough, in my opinion. Now, I asked the patent attorneys that we spoke to about this one, and they said the addition of the 3-dimensional scanner aspect might bring a little bit of complication into this one, and could pose a potential threat to Stratasys as well, because you must really heavily define what a 3-dimensional scanner is, and whether or not Bambu is actually utilizing 3-dimensional scanning when they're networked. We don't know for sure if they are because, of course, Bambu is a heavily locked down ecosystem. Out of all the patent claims that Stratasys has, this one to me is probably one of the more concerning when it comes to actual damage to the industry. And while personally, I don't care too much about networked 3D printing. We firmly believe in the sneaker net, which you can't stop and won't stop because these boots were made for walking, and that's just what they'll do.
Gonna walk. I love it.
This next one is a bit of an interesting patent, and it was filed in the latter days of 2022 for detection and use of printer configuration information. How the heck this patent was granted, I don't know, because so many companies have used this well before this patent even existed. The fact that this patent was even granted, in my personal, non-professional opinion, is appalling. I don't understand how this patent could have ever been granted. So this is slicing, and as you change parameters and you change materials, the software knows whether or not it needs to reslice. This has been a feature in slicers for years. How this patent was applied when open source solutions have existed for at least a decade that do this exact thing is kind of frustrating to me and shows the obvious flaws that we have in our patent and trademark system here in the United States. And the final patent that they are claiming is again another cloud one, but this one is specifically just for networked 3-dimensional printing. Again, I think the networked ones are going to be the two hardest ones for Bambu to beat. But I'm not exactly certain that Bambu is even intended to beat any of these. Let me put a tinfoil hat on here for you guys for just a minute. I've had a couple of conversations and I agree. I believe that Stratasys attempted to buy Bambu. I believe that Stratasys saw Bambu as a potential problem. Stratasys said, we'd like to buy you. Bambu said, kick rocks, we're doing just fine without you. And Stratasys said, fine, you don't want to play? We're going to take our ball, we're going to take our lawyers in the hardest area of the United States with the patent attorney judge, and we will see you in court. This, to me, feels like a shakedown of Bambu to try to get them to settle outside of court for an exorbitant amount of money that will cause them insane amounts of financial stress, or to get them to completely sell off their company to Stratasys, who we all know is going to take great care of it and do nothing but wonderful things for 3D printer manufacturers, because that's all they've ever done. Allegedly. I think that's what's going on here. It feels like Stratasys is pissed off, so they're throwing the book at Bambu, hoping that something sticks. I don't think a lot of this is going to stick, but it doesn't mean that Bambu doesn't have to defend it. Now, in my opinion, and in the opinion of at least one of the patent attorneys that we spoke to, Bambu has some great opportunity to go to the Patent Trials and Admissions Board, the PTAB, and go after them and say, look at all these friggin' useless patents that this company has done nothing with, and now they're just deciding to apply them when open source solutions have been available for this stuff for years. We can see that Bambu launched their Kickstarter May 31st of 2022, well before quite a few of these patents were ever even filed. That means that, quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, they don't apply to this. Bambu had printers already delivered to people before some of these patents were even filed. So it kind of upsets me as someone who has been incredibly critical of Bambu over the years for, in my opinion, very valid reasons, and in the opinion of some of our commenters, very not valid reasons, but hey, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I'm just the one that makes the videos about it. And we can see that as of August 24th, 2022, all the Kickstarter units had been shipped out to backers. Why is Stratasys trying to play this game of patents that existed after Bambu had already shipped printers? That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. But if you're Stratasys and you're a little bit pissed off, you bring in the Honorable Rodney Gilstrap as the judge in the United States District Court of East Texas, most notable for presiding over more than 1/4 of all patent infringement cases in the nation, and is referred to by various sources as the country's single busiest patent judge. Like, I kid you not, the man often has over 1,000 patent cases at any single time. But you might say, Grant, why would they choose this judge in this county in this area of Texas? Bambu has a nexus in the United States. It's in Austin, Texas. We wanted to visit it when we flew out to Austin, but no one got back to us. I wonder why. But it's because in this particular district of Texas, the plaintiffs can effectively pick the judge they want. And this guy, he's presided over some pretty serious intellectual property cases. And we'll link to his Wikipedia page in that description if you want to learn a little bit more about this guy. But suffice to say, Bambu has a very tough hill to climb because, well, if you're a busy judge, it is very difficult to make sure that everybody is getting the exact perfect amount of attention. Now, that's not to say that this judge is going to have any issues providing perfect attention, but he oversees a lot of these cases and has a lot of decisions under his belt. I'm very curious to understand how many of the cases that are seen in his court that actually end up going to a jury trial that don't actually settle outside of court. Because let's be real, this feels like a money grab from Stratasys, in my opinion, because they haven't applied any of these patents to anybody else. And you might say, Grant, what about Prusa? What about Creality? What about Lulzbot? What about all the other printer manufacturers? Yeah, what about them? Why have they been able to produce printers for so long that clearly violate most of these patents as well? And now all of a sudden you're gonna pick on Bambu just because they're the new swinging you-know-what in the community? Stratasys is the Goliath in the 3D printing industry, but Bambu is arguably the Goliath in the consumer 3D printing industry. Certainly one of the most recognizable brands out there, potentially fighting for the top place with Creality and Prusa. I still believe Creality produces more 3D printers, but we don't know. Prusa's the only one that actually is public about anything, and they've produced well over 100,000 Mark IVs, according to their recent blog posts. So I guess that begs the question, like I mentioned earlier on in the videos, what about everybody else? I'd love to know your thoughts about this because I'm not certain. I am certain that if I was producing 3D printers right now, I would absolutely be retaining an attorney, and I would be asking what I need to do. And I would assume, and according to the patent attorneys that I spoke to, the best thing that all the other companies can do is wait. Because right now, we don't know what's going to happen. These cases are just starting. All we have are notices, we have summons. That's all that we have. We don't even have discovery yet. Discovery is where this really starts to become a proper court case, and we get to see everything laid out publicly in front of us. Because this is one of the cool things about the United States civil court system is that it's all publicly available in dockets that you can search. But understand that this lawsuit could have monumental impact on not only current 3D printers on the market, but future 3D printers. Would you like me to reach out to 3D printer manufacturers to get their opinions on all of this? My assumption is most of them are not going to comment, because commenting would state they have a public opinion about it. But I'm happy to ask. And we will update this if we hear back from Stratasys' lawyers, because we did reach out to every one of the firms to get a comment as to why Stratasys is going after Bambu now and hasn't decided to enforce any of these patents up until this time. I assume I'm going to get a very legal answer and potentially some pissed off lawyers, but it's a very valid and understanding question to ask. One that I hope other attorneys are going to be asking as well. Why now, and why Bambu? If anything, it only proves that Bambu has a huge threat against Stratasys. I think Stratasys is going back to try to play in the consumer market. And they said, it's probably easier for us to absorb a company like Bambu, buy them out, take their tech, and just sell their machines at an increased rate. Think Micronics and Formlabs, which we'll card to that video if you want to see that as well. So how do I feel about all of this? I feel that this is an attack on 3D printing as a whole. Part of me is kind of glad that Bambu is the one that are being sued. But before you start typing out I knew you hated them, the reason I'm glad is I think Bambu is one of the few companies that is even remotely successful enough to be able to defend against Stratasys. They've got financial backing from huge companies, huge investment firms that will allow them to obtain some of the best lawyers possible to fight this case, where smaller companies would have no chance. Stratasys chose to pick on one of the giants in consumer 3D printing. And I'm glad they chose the one that has kind of shown that they're not gonna be allowed to be pushed around. But I think they have one of the best chances at defending this because they've done their research. Clearly, they've done their research because they released a printer that overnight became a sensation in this industry. So they clearly know a lot more than I would argue potentially anybody else in this industry. I'm kind of happy, but in a bad way, because I don't think they deserve it. If anything, I believe that Stratasys should be stripped of quite a few of these patents, and certainly given a slap on the wrist, because this does feel like a slap suit. But unfortunately, in this specific area of Texas, slap lawsuits aren't a thing. They were ruled not valid in the Texas Supreme Court. So, too bad. You can't do that. But I do hope for a positive outcome because this could once again bring 3D printing back to the dark ages. If you don't exactly know how all of this started, RepRap started because of some of these stupid patents from Stratasys and people wanting to be able to utilize technologies. I don't know, guys. I'd like to know your thoughts down below. I am very torn on this. I think it's an abuse and an attack of our patent system that should be good, but is heavily flawed on a company that has certainly done some violations, but I don't think anybody in this industry that produces a 3D printer is innocent. And because of that, I would argue that a lot of these patents are likely not as valid as you may think. Let me know your thoughts down below. And this recording is going to be over 40 minutes raw. We're going to release it with minimal edits to all of our channel member supporters whose names are listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. So if you want to see the in-depth thought about this, you can do so by joining via the links in that description below. And if you did like the video, make sure to give it a like. We'd certainly appreciate it. I've spent quite a few weeks working on this, talking to patent attorneys, talking to other people in the industry, getting opinions, thoughts, comments, and I believe, especially because we serve so many inventors out there, that we have a unique perspective as to what intellectual property actually looks like and how it is used and often abused by bigger companies going after the little guy. That is all we have for you all today. Click the links below me to check out some other videos if you're interested, but stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Hey, get subscribed if you made it this far. Clearly you liked the video. Take care.